Today we're going to be looking at a lesson on the relationship between kings and popes during medieval Europe, with a specific focus on our broader topic of Charlemagne and his empire. But before we can get into that, we need to take a little step back and just kind of look at the papal states and their history. So going back into the 500s CE, so after the barbarian invaders have come in and defeated the Western Roman Empire, we have barbarian control over Italy, but the Byzantines, that Eastern Roman Empire, still want control over that. They still see that as Roman land. So they mount an effort to reconquer Italy. And it's semi-successful for a while. That is, the Byzantines have a presence in Italy, but they never really get full control over the entire area. And it's always a stress on them, it's a financial burden on them. They're not getting a whole lot of benefit out of it because it's all this fighting, all this wealth, all these resources into this war that they just kind of never seem to have full control over the area. Now, while the Byzantine governors are in charge of parts of Italy, they still rely on this partnership with the Pope. The Pope has remained in Italy, accepted barbarian rule, although never really loved it. Now the Byzantines are in there and they kind of have a partnership for control. But as the Byzantine control over their lands, which you can see here, kind of the pinkish lands, so you can tell that they never really gained control over Italy in total again. And as their rule weakens and weakens and weakens, and as the Byzantine Empire gets consumed by other things, the Italians turn to the Pope for full leadership. And that's where we wind up with the Papal States. 751 CE, that is the date at which the Byzantines are finally done. They're done in Italy, they're out, they're not going to have anything to do with it on that scale again in their history. So the last Byzantine governor is defeated. The Lombards wind up being in control over most of Italy, although not all of it. The Pope, at this time that would be Pope Zachary, is in control of Rome and the surrounding land. So on this map, down in this area where I'm circling with my cursor, is under the control of Rome. Now, the Pope is now a political leader and not just a religious one, and he wants to keep that power and maybe even expand it back to where it had been with Byzantine help. So he reaches out to the Franks to help him in this effort, reaches out to the Franks to help protect him from the Lombards. Now, in 751, what this means is that he's reaching out to King Pepin. Pepin is actually not technically king at this point. This is still during the Merovingian kind of rulership of the Franks. But this is after Charles the Hammer has really taken control. His son, Pepin, is going to be Charlemagne's father. We went through that history before, but a little reminder there. We had Charles the Hammer, Pepin, and then Charlemagne. So we're now talking about Pepin, Charlemagne's father, is actually crowned as the king of the Franks in 751 as a part of this effort by the popes to gain an ally. They want protection from the Lombards. The strongest power in the area is the Franks, so they're reaching out to Pepin. And it pays off, because in 754 and 756, Pepin is going to invade Italy and is going to fight the Lombards and is going to defeat the Lombards on behalf of the Pope, who at this point is not Zachary. I think it's Stephen II. Pope Zachary is no longer with us at that point. But in any case, the popes have reached out, built this alliance with the Franks, and the Franks are coming in and helping. And not only are they helping, they give large parts of northern Italy, conquered and defeated by the Lombards, to the popes as a gift. And this is known as the donation of Pepin. This is how the Papal States are going to expand beyond just Rome. They'll never become huge, but they do expand beyond Rome because of the donation of Pepin. Now, there's a whole series of popes between Pope Zachary and Pope Adrian that are basically dependent on the Franks for support and for help and for protection. I don't want to say that they're weak, but they had a weak state, and therefore they really needed a lot of support by the Franks. And the Franks were really pushing this influence quite a bit, not just in political means, but also increasingly in spiritual ones, all the way up to Pope Adrian. Now, Pope Adrian is going to push back against this attempts by Franks, attempts by Charlemagne in particular, to get involved in spiritual affairs and to start telling the church how to interpret, spiritual affairs. Now, Pope Adrian is going to push back against this, and in pushing back against it, actually gain the respect and the admiration of Charles, of Charlemagne. Charlemagne's going to respect Adrian as a strong pope, and later in life as a friend. Pope Adrian will have a unusually long papal reign, about 20 years. And Charlemagne is, of course, going to be king of the Franks for like 40 years. So they get to know each other pretty well. They have a pretty good relationship. And they start to come into an understanding about the role of church and the role of state. That understanding is going to be really solidified under Adrian's successor, Pope Leo III. When Pope Leo III becomes pope, Charlemagne makes it very clear early on how their relationship is going to look going forward. He says to Leo that it is his function, Charlemagne's function, to defend the church, that it is his role to be the military, to be the protector, to defend Christianity in Europe, and that includes the Pope. And it is the Pope's role to pray for the realm and for the victory of his army. That it is a Pope's role to be a spiritual leader, not a political leader. And so we see the Papal States being absorbed into the Frankish Empire. Now, the Pope is going to remain in charge of local administration. So it's not as though the Papal States entirely become a part of the Frankish Empire, they just mostly are. And there's historical debate on whether or not we should include the Papal States as a part of their empire or not. I tend to say yes. I've also read sources that say no, and just understand that there is some controversy there. Now, through this partnership, though, both sides are going to really benefit. The church can really focus on church matters and expanding Christianity and reforming Christianity in all kinds of important ways, and the Franks, free from any worries about religious affairs, do focus on their secular reforms. This is the Carolingian Renaissance, which we referred to in an earlier lesson. Once again, we've got to talk about the crowning of Charlemagne. I know this has come up a couple of times, but Christmas Day, 800 CE, Pope Leo III does crown Charlemagne as the Emperor of Rome. This is again just signifying the partnership that church and state are going to have at this time. That Charlemagne as the emperor is a political ruler, the Pope as a spiritual ruler is going to give him that political authority. And they are going to work together quite effectively as a team. Now this relationship, this team, is going to kind of outlive Charlemagne and the Carolingians, although increasingly the Papal States are going to want more political control over their own territories. The Holy Roman Empire, in pink right here, is going to be one of the successor states to the Franks. The Frankish Empire is going to collapse during the time of Charlemagne's grandchildren. It's going to divide up into 3 different states, one of which is going to become the Holy Roman Empire. And this Holy Roman Empire is going to last for a long time. It lasts into the 1800s. So it's going to be around for 1,000 years, more or less. The popes are going to contend with these Holy Roman emperors. Sometimes this relationship that Charlemagne and Leo had constructed is going to work out for them, and sometimes it won't. Sometimes the popes don't want the Holy Roman Empire to have any political control over them. And that finally comes to a breaking point in 1177 CE, when the popes are going to regain sole political control of Rome. I have two maps here that's going to demonstrate this. This top one shows the Papal States as a part of the Holy Roman Empire, which they were. And then down here, you see that the Papal States have separated. And actually, by this time, the Holy Roman Empire has expanded to southern Italy as well. It just has that gap where the Papal States are independent. So that's kind of the relationship between these kings and emperors and the Pope, how it came to be, how it was during Charlemagne's time, and just kind of a little foresight into what's coming in the future. Hope you enjoyed today, and I'll see you for our next lesson.